In 2020, during the midst of the COVID, he got cancer. We battled through all of it, and our friends and our family prayed for us, and we prayed for each other. We went through the chemo. He was supposed to start radiation, but it never happened. It just didn't work out for radiation. He ended up having to go back into the hospital. And he told me, I said, I'm not ready for you to go. And he said, it's okay, because I know where I'm going, and I feel God's presence around me.
Hi, my name is Kathy, and this is my story. I was born into a Baptist family, multiple generations of Southern Baptist. I was born on a Sunday afternoon and announced at church that evening. My dad was a deacon, and I was there every time the doors were open. The church I was raised in was a large Southern Baptist church with many different activities, and I was involved in everything, especially music. From 2 years old through adult, I was in choir. That was my favorite part of church, being able to express myself through music. As a young girl, we had an organization in the Baptist church called GAs, Girls Auxiliary, and we studied the Bible. We sang songs, we had activities, just girls. I was 9 years old, and I was asking my parents all kinds of questions. I wanted to know all about the Bible, and I knew about Jesus. I'd been told about Jesus since I was in the cradle roll, the very beginning as a baby. I was asking so many questions. And while we were sitting there studying, the light bulb came on. All of a sudden, everything made sense. My parents explained things. We went over and over it. I asked so many questions. And we were able to sit and pray, to accept God and Jesus into my life. The whole world changed for me that night. I went to sleep with the knowledge that Jesus died for me. I was saved, and that I would be with Jesus forever, with all my friends and my families, that everything would be all right. The next day I woke up and I went to school, and I told my friends, I was saved last night. And most of my friends were excited for me. But there was that one little girl that said, so? And I thought, how sad, she doesn't know Jesus. And so I made it my mission to show her the love of Jesus. And by the end of our school year, she too came to know Jesus. And that was my first time to actually share with somebody. Since then, of course, I've grown up, stayed in the church most of my life. There's been a few times that I decided I didn't have enough time for church. I was able to share with people the gospel, to tell them of what Jesus did in my life. When I came back to church, the area that I was most interested in was music. I was able to lead a choir of little ones. I had 4 and 5-year-olds, and we had so much fun. And it's a way to connect with them without preaching to them. We can talk about music, we can enjoy music. And it made me feel like I could actually give more through music. When my girls were born, I had them in choir also. And they grew up in a musical family. I told my girls when they were little, make a list. Exactly what you want in a husband. And what's the very first thing you want? Because it was the same as my list. And the first thing was I wanted a Christian man. Someone that helped me to mold my family and to share the gospel. And both girls married fine Christian men. And now they're raising my 4 grandsons in the Christian family. 2 of the 4 have already made their profession of faith. They accepted Jesus into their heart. And I was there for their baptism and was so proud. My husband and I were married for almost 38 years. In 2020, during the midst of the COVID, he didn't get COVID,
he got cancer. On Easter weekend, we found out he had cancer. We battled through all of it, and our friends and our family prayed for us, and we prayed for each other. We went through the chemo. He was supposed to start radiation, but it never happened. It just didn't work out for radiation. He ended up having to go back into the hospital multiple times. But the last time was when he broke his hip, and he went in and had hip surgery. He went from the hospital to the rehab, and he was doing well. And then he had a turn for the worse, and he went back to the hospital. And he told me, I said, I'm not ready for you to go. And he said, it's okay, because I know where I'm going. And I feel God's presence around me. And so we moved him to a hospice. And I was there when he left. And I know where he is. I know that I'll join him in the future. I have a lot of work to do here first. My husband and I met when we were in our 20s. I was working as a police fire dispatcher, and he was a fireman. And when they found out there was a new girl at the dispatch, the single guys came and visited and would come by and say hi to me. And there was this handsome, red-headed, tall fireman that won my heart. He was soft-spoken and had the most gorgeous brown eyes that you've ever seen. But he had had a hard life too. His grandparents were in church and took him to church as a young child, and he made his profession of faith there. His parents, not so much. And so if he wanted to go to church, he had to find a ride because they were busy with their lives. So when he turned 17, he got them to sign for him to go into the Navy. It didn't take very long for him to end up in Vietnam. He was a corpsman with the Airborne Marine Unit, and they went into some of the most hostile areas. In the hostile areas, he would share the story of Jesus with the children. He and the interpreter would talk and tell them there was something better out there, that the war wouldn't last forever, that God loved them, and that was at 17 years old when he was in the military. And then he came back to the States. He came back to our area and became a fireman, and that's where I met him. I grew up in a musical family. My dad was a band director for public schools. So my music training started when I was little bitty. He would make a sound and say, match my sound, and I would match his sound. My favorite song is Amazing Grace because it tells the entire story. It was written by a ship's captain. He heard the sounds coming from underneath the ship of the slaves. They sang in a pentatonic tone, and he heard that and put words to it. The Lord worked through him and gave him the words to Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. When my youngest daughter was 17, she was involved in a car accident. She was driving a 3/4-ton truck, which probably is what helped save her. She was driving down a country road going westbound, and the man going eastbound dropped his cell phone, reached over to get it, and his tires went off the road. He jerked the wheel back onto the road, and when he did, he caught her in the back left tire. Her truck flipped multiple times. It landed in the ditch, upside down, facing the opposite direction. Thank God she had her seatbelt on. Her daddy had always told her, if you end up upside down, get out of the vehicle. It's the most important thing. Her driver's side window was still intact. She tried to kick the window out. It didn't budge. And then she heard the radio still playing. And she had electric windows, and she thought, maybe? So she pushed the button, and the window opened, and she was able to crawl out to the people that were there to help her. God saved her that day. And the rescuers came and they got her to the hospital. And I had the neighbor call me and say, your daughter's been in an accident. We need you here. But don't get upset when you get here and the truck's upside down. She's okay. She's being tended to. I drove faster than I should have to get there, and she was taken to the hospital and tended to. I stayed with her. But God watched over her because she has a purpose in life. Now she's married. She has a 9-year-old son who right now has been asking so many questions, and I'm so proud of her and what she's accomplished. But she's had a lot of illness in her life. She didn't know if she'd be able to have children, but she's been able to have one successfully, and he's truly a blessing to all of us. If you're watching me now, know that God loves you. He extends grace to you. I was told that grace, if you use the acrostic, is God's redemption at Christ's expense. He died for us. He wants you to come to Him. If you have questions, find someone to ask the questions, because there are no wrong questions, and the answers are out there waiting for you. My rock when I was growing up, and all the way up until just recently, was my mom. She was a Christian woman that prayed daily. If there was a prayer room, she signed up for it. The year I was married, 1983, they diagnosed my mom with breast cancer, and she had the radical mastectomy. 20 years later, they found out she had breast cancer on the other side too, and she went through the surgery again. My mom was a teacher. Her gift was working with a deaf education, and she worked all the way from the 2-year-olds through high school. When she retired from public school teaching, she went to the university and taught the student teachers that were going to be teaching the deaf education. When she retired from university, she kept tutoring at home privately up until she was about 88. She died 2 weeks before her 91st birthday, right in the middle of COVID, but she didn't have COVID, she had cancer too. And while I was trying to deal with my mom dying, was when my husband ended up back in the hospital. And I lost the two of them within 6 weeks of each other. I'm a Christian, but I'm not perfect. But God said I didn't have to be perfect. He just said, love Him. So through the example of my mom, I've tried to raise my girls and now be an influence on my grandsons. Because God gave me girls because He knew I couldn't handle boys. And now He's given me boys because I've decided He has a sense of humor too. I need to learn how to do boys and girls. So much of a blessing on them. Thank you for letting me share my story with you.